Okay, so hello, greetings. Welcome, it's Dr. Thomas Daffern. It's my usual weekly address for fasting against Brexit and against the madness of the world, militarism and surveillance capitalism and all the rest of it. And so instead of doing my normal talk, I'm fortunate to invite and welcome my guest here, come to the Museum of the Muses, Isabel Usher, who very interestingly has been working on the front line in the camps in Calais, helping refugees, and she's got a degree in Middle Eastern Studies, is half Lebanese, half British, and so, you know, everything I'm doing here at the museum is very, I think, sort of relevant to what she's been doing in her own way. And we're going to have a little chat, discussion, interview, and we'll see where we go from there. Okay? So welcome, Isabel. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
And pleasure to meet you.
Yes. Okay. So I've got some questions.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
So the first question, because it's Easter,
Yeah.
I don't really know much about Christianity. So the question is, what is the significance of Easter, and is it only in Christian, or is this a time of, in all the religions, is it a symbolic time?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, so the time is really based around the fact that spring has come,
Yeah.
and it's the equinox. From now on, the days are getting longer. We can feel it. You know, the mornings are bright and everyone's up early, and that horrible winter feeling's gone. And that's something that our ancestors for thousands of years noted. And in ancient Celtic Druid times, you know, they monitored the seasons, and in the same of all the pagan traditions. Yeah. In the Zoroastrian tradition in Persia, Nowruz is this time, New Year they call it, and they have big festivals and things. In Afghanistan too, and in many cultures in the world they celebrate the spring equinox, and they have events around this time. And in Judaism, it's normally Passover's around this time, which is a sort of celebration of life and all that. Mm-hmm. How it got to be connected with Christianity is interesting. Christ, the teacher, Rabbi Yeshua, in Galilee, as you probably know the story, I mean, your mother was Muslim, you know, and you know you've done RE in school a bit. You went to school in Britain, right?
Yes.
So, and did you go to school in Lebanon at all?
No.
Just in Britain, right. Okay, so, I mean, the Easter is this the Passion of Christ. And so the teacher, the good man, is arrested, falsely accused, humiliated, spat at, whipped, you know, all the nasty stuff was vented on him by people that were jealous and Sophia-phobic and didn't want him teaching. I mean, we've talked about this Sophia-phobia, the fear of wisdom. I mean, it's sort of pathological craziness in human beings. And also when mobs get involved, mobs seem to degenerate to the lowest common denominator. And we've seen that in Brexit and the mob attacking the capital, Trumpism. It's all pandering to the mob, also on the internet. And the ruder you are, the crueler you are, the more airtime you get, you know? Whereas Jesus wasn't. He was non-violent, peace-loving, kind, a proper teacher, right? A rabbi, good man. But no, the system got him, as it's got so many others. Socrates, Ali was martyred, you know, and in every tradition, all the good people get killed off. But in the story of Christ, something miraculous happened, which is extraordinary, and it's a good symbol for every spiritual tradition, is that he didn't stay dead. That's the belief. Now, that is extraordinary. It's in the Gospels that he actually came back to life, right? Now, that is unheard of. The local people that witnessed it, the local followers and so on, they believed that. Okay. They saw the evidence, and the fact that the first to witness it was Mary Magdalene, his close disciple, I think adds credibility to the story, because in those days a woman's word wasn't worth a man's in witness terms in law. So if you were trying to fake it and making a fake resurrection, you wouldn't say Mary had seen it first,
Right.
because that's like ridiculous, you know. You'd say Peter had seen it, or James, or one of the big apostles. So that adds credence to it. Actually, what happened, you know, was he like fully dead when he was on the cross? Was it a sort of like he nearly died? And, you know, I suspend judgment. I don't know enough. But what I love about Christianity is the symbolism of truth, righteousness and love and education win out over the ignorant mob. And that to me is worth celebrating. So that's why I celebrate Easter. But I also love the spring, and it's a Druid festival, the equinox. And interesting enough, the date of Easter is set. It's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So it changes its week each year.
Right.
And that's a bit ad hoc. It means it's not actually the exact date of the crucifixion and resurrection. We don't know when that was, actually. 33 AD, they think.
Okay.
And probably in April. But there's no I mean, scholars have written hundreds of books about when it was, and they don't know.
Is Ramadan also to do with this time? Spring?
It comes soon, yeah.
Oh, it doesn't always.
But again, it's never on.
change.
It changes because the Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar, and that can literally come at any time of year.
Yeah.
Ramadan. I think at the moment it's springish
It's
time.
in 10 days.
Yeah, it's starting in 10 days. Right. Okay, so it's kind of now, but in 50 or 100 years it'll probably be different.
Yeah.
Be in
And
the
a
winter.
couple of years ago it was in July, not now, in August.
Right. Right.
The change has got like
Okay. Well, I don't do Ramadan on Ramadan. I cheat and I do it once a month, once a week, every Sunday.
Yeah.
I drag it out over the year. So I do 50 days every year.
More than that.
More than Ramadan, yeah.
Okay.
Right,
The next question
yeah.
is a bit more vague.
Mm-hmm.
It's, has the planet, has it really got the ability to live? Do we really have the ability to be living in peace and harmony? Do you think it's actually a viable aim?
Well, I do. I think it's sad that you have to ask, you know. I mean, when I was young, I wouldn't have asked that question. I just like assumed that was logical and we were going to get there.
Okay.
I suppose it was being born in a family of peace activists who were on the left politically and socially active, and that optimism was there. We will get there. And as I explained earlier, we were talking about the Fabian Society, how you may lose some battles, but you win in the end. I'm still a Fabian in spirit. I believe that even though the Tory government seems to have taken over our country and turned it into a nightmare concentration camp of madness, they will go. We will grow out of them. The people are intelligent. And yes, I mean, it has to start with us individually. We can all make that choice to live peaceably with our neighbour, not to fly into tempers, to practice some kind of spiritual discipline that calms our mind, meditation, prayer, whatever, to do study of philosophy and ethics so that we know how to act. Those are personal choices. You can't force them on anybody. But you can encourage them if you're a parent or a friend.
Yeah. And
you can offer it. I mean, I offer teaching, I have done for years as a philosopher and scholar, you know. And if people have the discipline to pursue the clues that I've given, they can reach enlightenment in this one lifetime. You know?
Do you think that
and yes, we can reach an enlightened planet in this one lifetime. That is my plan.
But
yeah.
Since the beginning of humanity,
it's been more difficult.
It's just
wars have been happening and all that.
Always.
Not always. No, there are long periods of peace in history, which have been, of course, not documented by historians enough. My friend Elise Boulding, a professor of peace studies in America, wrote The Long History of Peace. Scandinavia hasn't fought a war for several hundred years.
Right.
Switzerland hasn't. You know, there are pockets of peace. And Europe, since World War II, hasn't fought in at least Western, Northern Europe. Which is why I really support the EU. You know, we've had peace guaranteed by that.
But peace here, not peace. They're exporting their war to a different place, or like the.
Well, I know what you're
war
saying.
is like
I would like that not to
buying-
be the case. I would like us to be exporting peace.
yeah.
And that's why I called for a European Union mediation service, actually. We haven't had that conversation yet. I would literally like the EU to be exporting peace.
Then
Like,
they'd have
and
to stop
helping
buying
mediation.
things from. War can also be an economic war. So they'd have to stop buying things from countries, buying cheap stuff from.
Made by slave labour or
Yeah.
something, yeah. Well, of course, all that needs to be sorted,
Okay.
of course. Economic policy. I mean, I don't agree with sanctions like the US is imposing on any country it like blinks at it. And as you know, they're trying to impose sanctions on Iran, or reimpose even stronger sanctions, which is just false policy. And they're threatening the EU unless we do the same. They're going to clobber the EU, which is bonkers. I've argued the EU should have a peace policy at the forefront, and also the states should.
Yeah.
And I was on a Zoom call with Pakistani Sufi. In fact, when you arrived, right, I was doing that recording, which apparently went live yesterday on his Sufi channel in Pakistan. And I said to him that the US should totally rethink its anti-Iranian policy, and Israel should too. They're actually friends, they should be, historically. And I'm working tirelessly to that end as chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. So that's a total transformation of the way we think about Middle East policy. Right, okay, what's the next question?
The next question is something that I was speaking to my friend about the other day, and
And by the way, can I just finish? So
yeah,
that question, we don't know if we're going to get peace. I've worked tirelessly for 40 years as a philosopher and teacher. I don't know if we're going to get peace. The ignorant idiots that run Britain's nuclear weapons and America's and the rest, I mean, it might all blow up tomorrow. We don't know. But the fact that that is hanging over us should make us work even more tirelessly to prevent it.
okay,
And I just have faith. I don't think God or the Great Spirit or Allah, or whatever you want to call Yahweh or Vishnu, has created this beautiful world with us here for it to all destroy in a myriad of mushroom clouds. I act in faith and love that we will get peace on this planet, because I believe that's the will of the Creator. And if we align to that, we will do that. Okay.
okay. This question is something that I question a lot. Are we born innately good? Do we then learn badness? Is everyone born innately good? Do we know how do you know what goodness feels like? Where does that come from?
Well, I believe we're all born ontologically equal,
Okay.
which is a sort of philosophical way of saying the souls are equal at different, ontologically, in their beingness. Every soul that's incarnated, you, me, the postman, whoever,
Okay.
animals, there's a gradation of being. So like different animals, plants, etc., they have their own soul type, I think, like tree beings and animal beings. And yes, I would say all the different animals, but they have their own personalities, just as humans do. And some are slightly naughty. Some cats will scratch you when you meet them. Bishy will just be friendly and lick you. I think we're born with the potential of goodness. Just 1 second. Right, I just needed some water here. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge old question in philosophy. I mean, different thinkers at different times have taken a different position on this. In the official church Christian stuff, there's this idea of the fall of man. We're born like not quite perfect, or some of us quite wicked and evil, fallen. And the point of Christ was to come, teach us, get us out of that. And some of us make it and some of us don't. That's sort of medieval Christianity, which has now been replaced by a more modern kind of psychological approach. Rousseau and the Enlightenment and 18th century thought said, no, we're born good. And it had this idea of the noble savage, that our ancestors have been good, you know. Primal people are not evil and wicked.
Yeah.
There is conflicting evidence from anthropological reports, and I've been reading 2 books recently. One called The Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker, I think, who says against that. He says that no, actually primitive man was quite naughty, did a lot of headhunting, did cannibalism, a lot of deaths per million, and and his theory is that as states become civilized, quote unquote, governments and police forces appear, then the homicide and death rates do go down. And he presents a lot of evidence statistically to show that. So he thinks we're getting better, like civilization's a good thing.
Right.
And that, you know, so we're being socialized to be better. There are other anthropologists, particularly a great work called Sex at Dawn, which is a great title, which argues against Steven Pinker that no, our early hominids were much nicer than that. And so it's a debate, and the fact is we don't know, because there aren't that many skeletons from, you know, 50,000 years ago for us to see how many arrowhead points are in them and how many died of homicide or war. I think that we have potential to go either way as people. But I mean, so in my life I've met, I don't know how many thousand people. I've taught at least 5,000 people in my life, you know, like one-to-one, like talking to you, but in the classroom type things. And I've met socially, networking through my institute, you know, hundreds, thousands of people. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, I've known 10,000 people in my life, I don't know, vaguely.
Yeah.
I've known maybe 5 people that I would say are really like wicked, maybe 10 that are really like evil. Now that's not a lot.
No.
And even those, I would say, had psychological problems and could have been helped with therapy.
Yeah.
So I think the figures are quite good, aren't they?
Yeah.
But anyway, no, it's a good question, and you should read those books when you've got time.
Okay. This is something I just made up. Do you think climate change will help us or hinder the movement towards peace? Do you think we'll all come together and help each other, or do you think we'll end up
arguing about it and falling out more?
Really hoarding our own stuff?
That is a good question. And I hope it's the former. I hope and I believe that the environmental challenges facing the planet will make us wake up in time. I know that's the hope of mature statesmen like Biden, Angela Merkel, Jeremy Corbyn, you know, Keir Starmer, the decent politicians around, Nicola Sturgeon. They're all doing their best to help fight climate change through greening the policies of the economy, through having less waste, more recycling. You know, there's a myriad of things we can do. Stopping pumping out carbon. I mean, if I was in charge of British or European policy on this, or American, the first thing I'd do is stop the military.
Yeah.
Because the military is the single biggest polluter and carbon user on the planet. And this is never mentioned by the Green Movement. And I find it very odd. The whole Extinction Rebellion people never had the slogan, "Green is peace," or something. That should have been their slogan. So the old CND peace ban the bomb types should be best friends with the green types. But instead, and this is why I'm suspicious of of the splitting of the peace and the green movements. I suspect that the corporate interests, I have a book in there about the history of corporate infiltration of the green movement to take the teeth out of it. It was a deliberate strategy because the green movement was winning, and that would mean all their big corporate power would go. So they sort of infiltrated it and turned it greenish, greenwash they call it.
It's not radical.
No, the only way to solve the stabilisation of the planet's ecology is to get a universal peace agreement and abolish this huge expenditure on weapons and the creation of weapons. Britain's just built a vast aircraft carrier. Look at the steel it used, the energy, all the steel that came from the mines, vast expenditure of millions. And a friend of mine just saw it in a lock in Scotland near my old castle, loading nuclear weapons onto it. That's what she said. I mean, it's hearsay, I can't say, but that's what she saw, because they're stored in Coalport Mountain. Now all that is vastly energy intensive. That's what's ruining the planet. And then, okay, if they ever went off, if there's a Third World War, nuclear or conventional, it's curtains for the environment.
Yeah.
Because I once went to a seminar at King's College at the University of London by Greenpeace on the effects of the first Iraq War.
On the environment.
On the environment. And they counted up that more carbon was released in those battles than like in decades of normal stuff. Yeah. And also because of all the oil wells that were set on fire by Saddam, he was so annoyed. And they burned all this oil, so I've got the data in a report upstairs from Greenpeace. So I don't know why nobody in the Green movement is shouting this from the rooftops and so the Green Party should be allying with other peace parties like SNP, which wants to get rid of nuclear weapons from Scotland, and Labour Party ought to be making those noises.
There's a branch of Stop the War people. I think Jeremy Corbyn had a Stop the War movement.
Well, that war wasn't stopped. I mean, it's a bit like saying, like bring back the Victorians. I mean, we need to stop the next war.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Let's rename that. Stop the next war.
I have friends in the anti-arms trade movement, but when they have a protest at the biggest arms fair in England, there's only about 20 people there. The whole of the Social Rebellion should be with them.
Oh, they should all be there. Like we should marry up the Green and the peace movements. Now, I've supported the campaign against the arms trade, CAT it's called, for years. And the head of the Anglican Peace Fellowship, which I'm a member of, is also secretary of that movement. And we've been calling for this for years. What's going on, of course, is that the media, the BBC, the Telegraph, the Times, all the official media, don't report this. No. They don't give people the intellectual or informational tools to join up these issues. Yeah. I only have worked this out because I've spent 40 dogged years since I launched Philosophers of Peace in 1984. Yeah. Like a terrier, I won't let go until we get peace in my lifetime. In your lifetime. And I've done the homework, And media silencing is, I think, passé, to be honest. We have to, now we've got the internet and stuff, we can get the message out independently of the main media.
But the internet's controlled by people. Okay,
so it's like, but then there's the good guys setting up new websites and things. I mean, we have to hope that, and there's a fight going on in the internet, who owns it, and there's the surveillance capitalism types trying to monetize it, make it all pay to learn. Yeah. And then there's the free people who actually invented the thing, who are supporting Sir Tim Berners-Lee and others to try to reclaim it for the people. I'm with that lot, and I'm using it because it's I love it, but there's so much garbage on it and misinformation.
No, Tim Berners-Lee went to my primary school.
Did he really?
Yeah.
As a kid?
Yeah. So we have a Tim Berners-Lee.
Where was that?
In Sheen.
In Sheen in South West London. But he wasn't there when you were there, obviously.
No.
So do you have like a room named after him?
Yeah, the assembly hall is for the Tim Berners-Lee hall.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah. What a small world. Yeah, I've not met him, but he's a clever guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and a question that's again different to the other ones is, is intellectualism and academia Is it classist and inaccessible?
Good question. It shouldn't. I mean, it shouldn't be.
No.
I mean, certainly shouldn't be inaccessible. I mean, thinking, intellectualism, genuinely deeply thinking, should be. It's a human right. We are Homo sapiens, and we have brains, and we have hearts, and we have minds and souls, and it should be like, it's part of the package. I mean, I didn't come from a particularly privileged background. I wasn't born into an Etonian type family. We didn't have vast wealth or anything. But we did, my parents honoured learning. And they had a great library, and they introduced me to the love of books and study and, etc., etc. And so I think I'm a living example of that it isn't classist, and it's not elitist and outside of, our grasp. And there are many great intellectuals who come up from the ranks, come up from the working class, the middle class. It's not. I mean, there are people that want to keep it as an elitist activity. The Etonians, the Boris Johnsons, and now the nouveau riche. You see, anybody with money can buy that facade or veneer of. I mean, Boris Johnson is from a nouveau riche family, who's bought his Etonian credentials and bought his way into control of the Tory party. He's not an intellectual. He just has a smattering of classics knowledge. He can quote bits of Latin.
Okay.
I mean, I've corresponded with him. I have people that I know who know him very well. And he's not that intelligent.
He's not?
No, he's absolutely not.
Okay.
And he's not morally intelligent. This is the most shocking thing about it. You see, genuine class is, and I'm not against the aristocracy per se, I'm against false, fake aristocrats that have bought their way into positions of power and authority and then misuse that power. I've known people at all levels of society, the poorest rung up to the, aristocratic rung, and there are good and bad people at all levels. And, I've taught people from all those rungs of life. To me, we're all servants of the ultimate, and we should be humble to each other. I mean, Christ, we're celebrating his life in Easter. I mean, he washed the feet of his disciples. He said, don't make me a Lord and Master, because we're all here to serve the one.
Then do you think class should be... Do you think that aristocracy should be abolished?
I think that, a friend of mine who knows me very well once called me a hippie aristocrat.
Okay.
This was years ago, right? She summed me up. So I actually think that we should be levelled up, not down.
So everyone should be aristocrat.
Well, absolutely. And that's what the Rastas say. They greet each other as king or queen.
Yes.
If you've ever met a Rasta and got to know them, they'll call you queen, right? Because you are.
Yeah.
And I'm a king, right? We all are. This is the point, the secret of the Rastas. They know this. We're all kings and queens here. And that's the highest level of democracy, when we realise our enlightenment and become illuminated like the Rastas, in the proper light. That's the point of Christ. He Christed people, that made them kings and queens, So that's, I think, enlightenment solves the problem of class by levelling up.
Okay, and then this is the last question.
Okay, fine.
So I was reading this thing about about Carthage and the human sacrifice, and the woman in the poem was very upset by it. But I've had a conversation with people before where I've said that the relationship to death was so different. So do you think that human sacrifice can we say it's a bad thing, or is it only a bad thing in our time? And actually back then it was an honour, so does that make it bad? If it was actually honourable to...
I suppose if it's voluntary. If you're really old, I mean, if I'm really old, dying in hospital, semi-senile, and I'm given a choice, you can stay here 20 years and we'll keep turning you on the mattress and you'll get bed sores and you'll go gradually do lally.
Yeah.
Or We'll sacrifice you on top of a great pyramid in Hyde Park with a great festival. We'll have 200,000 people there playing music, rock concert, pyramid lighting, and then you'll go out, a quick blade thing.
Yeah.
I'd probably go for the second one because it'd be more fun. but you know, but I think it's a funny thing, human sacrifice, and it's one of the weird things about the Christian stuff is that I've always had difficulty with this idea Christ was sacrificed for our sins. And, you know, I have trouble with the fact that some evidence points to human sacrifice was practiced by all tribes in ancient times, in American Indian culture. I wrote a long essay on American Indian ethics and discovered that doing the research. You know, we idolise American Indians, but they used to do human sacrifice.
But then do you not think that...
And the Aztecs did it big time, you know.
It's
and
not,
so did the Romans and the Greeks.
It's not that bad if your relationship with death is so different. If death is actually a good thing in that time, then
But how can
why is it a bad thing?
Okay, but like that's okay. Well, I think life is a good thing. I mean, death is a good thing if it comes at the end of a long life, well lived, and it's nothing to be afraid of. You know, it's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah.
Because it's just a transformation of your body state to a disembodied state, in my opinion. But I don't think it should be welcomed, and I also don't think we have the right to do it to each other without permission. I don't think we have the right to kill or take a life. I mean, Moses was quite clear on that. Thou shalt not kill, said God. And I stick with that one. And I think that the seminal moment of stopping human sacrifice was given in the Abrahamic tradition.
Okay.
When Abraham didn't kill his son, Isaac, he was wanting to and thought it was a good idea. But at the last minute, God stopped him.
Yeah.
And when I read the Bible for the first time, which you haven't yet done, you have that joy in front of you, you'll realise that is quite an epochal shift in human consciousness.
Okay.
And that was the prophetic genius of Abraham, who's the father of all three great monotheistic religions. And he got it in fear and trembling, as Kierkegaard said. He realised it was wrong to sacrifice his son. And for all we know, they'd been doing it up to that point. At that moment, he woke up and realised his son had a right to live and was precious.
Wow.
And I think the story of, you know, God told him, I think it's just like a retrospective folktale version of what actually happened. I think there was a real guy called Abraham who nearly sacrificed his son and had this moment of revelation. And I think he had it on behalf of us all. And with that comes the idea that life is precious and sacred, and therefore we should honour and love each other, you know. So that's, I think, when, archetypally, that's the moment when humanity realised human sacrifice was wrong.
Okay.
And when that teaching spread gradually through the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, then they stopped doing it.
Okay.
You know, and the Druids of Britain, I mean, they stopped doing it when they became Christian. Not that they'd done it, I think, very much up to then. Probably they'd stopped before. But according to Herodotus, there was this idea in the Scyths, the Scythians, that if you wanted to contact the gods in a hurry, like you couldn't send an internet or anything or phone, and you had to contact the gods, it was an emergency, your tribe was about to be attacked tomorrow by a vast army, you'd sacrifice a messenger who would take to the gods in the afterlife immediately an urgent please help us message. It was a way of getting their attention. And you can see the logic behind that. If you're a sort of person that there's no internet, there's no postal service, there's no telephone, how are you going to talk to God? Well, you're going to send, you know, that funny shaman guy that lives in the woods